This is the continuation of the lecture on tables from Introduction to GIS at St. Charles Community College. So in this part of the lecture, we are going to talk about ArcCatalog, and we're also going to learn how to make our own table. So catalog is fairly simple. You get to it the same way that you get to map, from the Start button, then into All Programs, open up the ArcGIS folder, and then select ArcCatalog. It's usually the first thing. Catalog is very similar to Windows Explorer or My Computer, where you have a tree of files on one side and then information about those files on the other side. It's a little bit more sophisticated in terms of being related specifically to GIS by being able to move smoothly between catalog and map. Once you find a file or a feature class that you're interested in, you can just click and drag it from one to the other, and I'll show you how we can do that. So the first thing we need to do is find some data. Now, just like when you add data in map, if your folder that you're interested in is not listed here already, you will need to connect to it, just as you connected to it to add data in ArcMap. So I'll go ahead and do that just to remind you of the process. So I have stored some data on the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and just select desktop and then select OK. Then I can open up the folder that is my desktop, to getting to know, and then find whatever data it is that I'm interested in. So if I open up a particular folder, then I can get to some specific data. But whatever it is that you choose, once you find something, I think there's some good data in 6. Yeah. So once you find something, then you can go ahead and select it in the left column, and then you will get information about it on the right-hand side of the page. So for example here, if we have our Contents tab selected, we get to see what the lakes, what type of file it is, it's a shape file, those sorts of things. The Preview tab is very helpful because it is just that. It shows you what the data looks like. Now Preview has a few options. You can keep the preview at Geography, which clearly is a map, or you can switch it over to the Table option. And the Table option is handy because then you can identify what type of data it is that you're interested in and whether or not that feature class has it. Let's say, for example, that you wanted to know what state the lake was in. Well, this has some information. It has the area and it has the name, but it does not tell you what state it's in. So then you could look at the information before you added it to your project. The last tab up here is what's referred to as the Description tab. The Description tab gives you information about how the information was created, what it is specifically, if it has any problems or known faults to it, what the keywords are, any citation issues, where it came from, who made it. We'll also give you information about all of the individual fields, that sort of thing. This is often what's referred to as the metadata. Now, metadata is very useful. It's, in essence, data about data. Sometimes the metadata comes fully exposed or fully revealed within the ArcCatalog area, but not always. Sometimes there's information that's just not listed here that you have to purposefully go and get. Here, for example, is a whole area just about the fields. So it tells you what the field is, how many there are, that sorts of things. If it has an alias, any of that information is down here. That can be very, very useful. If you need additional data, though, you can go up to the Customize tab and down to the options, to the ArcCatalog options. And then you're going to pull up some additional data. Usually this FGDC metadata, that's usually the most useful. And if it's not already selected, then you can add it and you will be given additional data. It looks like this was already presented for us. But it's a useful thing to know how to do because it's not always all revealed. So that's what we do for our catalog. So for example, if we say, yes, in fact, this is a good piece of data for us, back again here in what would otherwise be the table of contents, we just click it and drag it over to map. You can see the dark line here so that you can identify where it's going to be placed, and then just release it, and then we're good to go with that particular piece of data. Now the next thing we need to talk about is how we either get tables into map, and clicking and dragging is one way to do it, but also making our own data. So, and our own tables. We will do this very, very regularly throughout the semester, so it's important to know how to do it. The first thing we need is what's referred to as a personal geodatabase. The GIS software is very particular about how files are stored. And a personal geodatabase is a specific type of folder that, in essence, has protections around it. It keeps the data safe, and it allows the computer to understand what is inside of this can or in this folder so that it knows what to do with it. So the first thing we're going to do is make a PGD. So here I have a folder that is my specific online Intro to GIS online folder. I have a separate folder inside that called Data, and this is where I'm going to put my PGD. Remember, you want to be careful about how you save your data. It has to be clear. So the way we make a personal geodatabase is by selecting where we want it to be stored and right-clicking down to New, and very simply, Personal Geodatabase, and you just click it. Now we have that here, a new PGD. You can rename it if you want. I'm going to leave it long so that it stays pretty clear. Now if we're going to make a table, again the table needs to be inside the PGD. So now we highlight the PGD and again go to New, and we have some different choices inside the PGD, over to Table, and we'll just select a new table. And at this point we just identify and go through the dialog box and fill in what is requested. So a name, I'm going to say New Table, right? I'm just going to give it a name, whatever it might be, and select Next. This is a relatively important box. This is where you get to identify what fields you're going to start with, what fields you will have in your table. So we'll just put a few in here. You get to identify the name of the field and also what type of data it's going to be. Is it going to be words? Is it going to be numbers, short or long integers, or text words? We'll get to doubles and floats a little bit later on, but for right now we'll just leave it at text. You can also down here change how long the length of it is. You want to be a little bit careful with that. You don't want it to be too long because then your table is just too big, but you also want to make sure that you have enough space. If you run out of space, whatever data you put in there will be truncated and you'll lose that data. So you just want to make sure that you think about it to start with. So I'll just add some nonsensical field names in here. You know, whatever it is that you're interested in, that's what you would put. And then you would just finish. I'm going to switch my tab over here back over to Contents. So again, now inside my new personal geodatabase, I have a table called New Table, and it's listed right here. So in order to get data into the table, it's a two-step process. You make the shell, you make the table itself in Catalog, but then you have to populate it or put data into it in Map. So now that I've made the shell, I'm just going to click and drag my table over to Map, and then I'm done with Catalog. So I can go ahead and click out of here. Let me open this a bit so we can see a little more. Here's our summary table that we did from the past exercise. I'll just close that up so it's not so distracting. So here's our new table that we've got. Now if you right click on it just as before and open it, we can see that we have a table, but it's empty, right? There's nothing in it. We have the fields, name, color, and pet that I created before, but there's no data. So in order to add data, we have to begin to edit the table. Now for this we need our editor toolbar. If you've been working, it's possible that it might already be up, but usually it does not come listed as default. So we will go to our Customize tab, to Toolbars, and find Editor, right? We don't need to go down to Customize here. We can just select it. Once the editor toolbar is presented, you can move it around. You can dock it up here if you choose to. I tend to leave mine loose just so that I can see it a little bit better, but everything's preference of how you interpret your screen the best. So once we have the editor toolbar, we're going to pull down the first option here and start editing. Now, at this moment, the computer does not know which of all of the things within your table of contents you want to edit. So it says, okay, you've got a lot here. What do you want to edit? So you find what you're interested in and select OK. At that point, sometimes it'll say there's a slight little problem in putting it. Do you mind? No, I don't mind. So I'm going to say continue. And now you can see the screen has changed and it's given me room to type. So now you can begin to put in information, right? Just put in a name. Whoops. If you make a mistake, just click back into it. You can enter or cursor over. Whatever. Right, and then you just keep entering information. Whatever. Once you get your information in, then you are going to need to stop editing. You can save your edits first if you choose, but if you stop editing, it will do it. It will ask you automatically, and it did, luckily. So you say yes, and then you're good to go. So making tables is really quite easy, and we will do it repeatedly throughout the semester. So this will be a process that you will need to be familiar with. The last thing that we're going to cover just very briefly is how to get into ArcToolbox. For the most part, we won't use it too frequently throughout the semester, but there will be a few tools that we'll need to find. Unlike Catalog, which opens as a separate program, if you will, ArcToolbox just opens as part of ArcMap. So up here in the top, you can see there's a little red, looks just like a toolbox that you would put tools in. If you click it, that additional program will open up, seems to take a second here, right in your ArcMap program itself. So here is what that looks like. You can dock it if you want to, or you can just leave it loose. There are a lot of tools that are in here. We will get to some of them, but not nearly all of them. As you can see, some of these folders even have folders inside of them. So there are, 100 probably different tools in here. Some of them we will use throughout the semester, but for the most part, everything that we need is on the main program itself. So that concludes this portion of the lecture for tables.